Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways. Alarm! Hello all and welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, and James Holland, your Second World War podcast of choice. Jim, you still in Cornwall writing?
Yeah, I'm still there in my writing retreat. Wilf has just shot down a Messerschmitt 109 and has got his eye lining up a Heinkel 111 over the beaches of Dunkirk. So he's about to come through the cloud and descend down over the beaches themselves. And there's going to be a fantastic link up with another character. So I'm quite happy with that.
Lovely. Well, I've just had that moment where you couldn't... I thought I'd written a chapter yesterday on one computer and it turns out I'd written on the other, and I thought I'd lost a whole day's work.
No, but you haven't.
Yeah. But I found it. So we can proceed, and we're joined by a special guest, sort of more from my world, I suppose, or my old briar patch, or my current still. We should get this guest to introduce themselves.
Yeah, it's going to be easier if I just introduce myself.
That's such a cop-out.
It's Eddie Izzard here, or Suzy Izzard, or Suzy Eddie Izzard, which wasn't my plan. I was going to be one or the other, and I just thought people could choose. So I said, prefer Suzy, don't mind Eddie, prefer she, her, don't mind he, him. So no one can make a mistake. This is designed to take the problems out of...
To take the flack of name conundrums.
Yeah, remove flack from this. So if people call me Eddie, I want people to call me Eddie because I don't want it to be a dead name, so I want it still to be active because I am gender fluid. But a lot of people are delighting in calling me Suzy, and some people call me Suzy Eddie, which I wasn't planning with, and now I'm going with and saying, what the hell, just call me any of those. Just don't call me Arthur or Sabrina because then they're not where I'm going.
Well, I should say, you and I have actually met before, and I can't remember if it was 2014 or 2019, but it was one of those anniversaries over in Normandy, and we were in a studio, I think, and maybe it was 2014, because I'm pretty sure it was in Arromanches.
It's when you were running your marathons. I remember watching it, so I can confirm that this happened.
Well, this was something I really wanted to talk about because... The thing I was doing there, I don't know if you remember because you're expert, and all the great experts on D-Day in Normandy were there. And I'd been going for many years, and I went with my dad, and my dad had first taken this years ago. But I started doing this thing, which has never got traction, and no one's really interested in it. And maybe people think it's a bit wrong to do, but I do these three gigs, which I do three gigs in 3 hours in 3 languages. The 3 main languages used in the Battle of Normandy. So I do it in German, then I do it in English, then I do it in French. I finish in French because it's in the land of France. And a 55-minute gig, then we change the audience over, and then we do the next one. And we do it in Caen, and we do it on that day, and the profits go to charities. And the German to the Tripping Stones. Do you know the Tripping Stones one? This great, wonderful guy, he's an artist. Gunther Demnig, I think is his name. He puts down brass stones in front of any house where the Nazis took people away and they murdered them, they tortured them. Tripping Stones.
Stolperstein.
I've got a German name, even though I can speak German, or somewhat speak German. And so I do these things, and I know the 80th is coming up, so I'm going to go back there, and we've now got a theatre in Caen that I'm going to do it. So I'm encouraging British people to come, because the profits go to charity. I'm encouraging French people to come who know me less, even though I am known in France, but only through the comedy fraternity more. And the German people have got to go to Normandy and turn up and then come to the show. But the German gigs have been fantastic. I remember last time I was there, which was 2019, I think it was. Anyway, 2019, did the German gig, and I thought it was a really good gig in German. And just to commemorate the fallen, but celebrate everyone who's tried for peace and reconciliation and understanding at a time when the world is going to hell in a handbag. I like doing these gigs, so I'm going to keep doing them every 5th anniversary because I think it's positive.
But you've just been running the marathons, hadn't you? Because I remember you on that broadcast talking about how you could relate to the idea of just getting your head down and doing something, getting on with it, the way that people would have had to man an anti-aircraft gun or whatever, framing it in those terms about how your mental attitude to the marathons was.
It was a determination. It was more like selection, because I know selection, for having talked to Special Forces people about selection and how hellish it is. This was a plan of mine. I was quite seriously how to get in and do that. But the marathons were, it has relentlessness, determination. It just, no one's firing at you. So it is a very different thing to anyone in the forces. But, it's raising money for good things and helping people, and some people who are British people who are ex-forces people who have injuries or suffering from PTSD and stuff. So it's that was in 2009 actually. So it was a little bit after, but I was still doing them, and I did South Africa. I tried in South Africa 2014, and then I just kept doing them.
But Eddie, one of the things that I remember about that being over in 2014 in Arromanches was there was this incredible party atmosphere. It was just fantastic. Everyone was, it was so multinational. There were all sorts of people there from all different countries around Europe. There weren't so many Germans, admittedly, but there were still Germans there as well. And everyone was in this kind of sort of party celebratory kind of mood. And of course, all the veterans that were there were being treated like kings. And it was really joyous, is what I remember about it, really distinctly. And it's so depressing, isn't it, that here we are, kind of, almost 2 anniversaries later, 8 years later, 10 years later, rather, and we're confronted by a world which is so riven and so unconnected. And
well, I would argue, actually, as someone who's going into politics, but I'm looking at it, it's Putin's war. It's not the Russian people's war. So that's what's going on there. The one in the Middle East, Hamas, Israel, that goes all the way back to 1967, and the two-state system. You've got it. That's the only way peace is, and beyond, and that's the only way peace can be had. But it's getting more and more down to just individuals starting things up. Putin started all that. Without Putin being there, none of that would have happened. None of that Ukraine-Russia situation, war, would have happened at all. So it's less and less individuals who want it. And if you added up the 8 billion people in the world, it's going to be 99.9999 are recurring who actually want live and let live in peace. So even though it looks completely hellish in the world, the reality is most of us don't want that. But I'm with you on this commemoration and celebration. That's what the D-Day anniversary should be. Commemorate the people who fell and celebrate
the freedoms that they fought for. That was
yes, exactly. And celebrate what German people have now done. Because I said this is what I said at the end of Valkyrie. This thing that we do Valkyrie. There's a press conference at the end. I got the impression that Tom Cruise hadn't been doing press in the morning. But anyway, everyone's lined up there, from Ken Branagh, Tom Cruise, Tom Wilkinson, big names, and me, an ex-street performer, standing at the end, who broke into Pinewood Studios when I was 15. I'm very happy to be there. And I know a lot about World War II. I'm semi-encyclopedic as opposed to you guys being fully encyclopedic. And so anyway, they're going through this stuff. First question, Tom Cruise. Second question, Tom Cruise. Third question, Tom Cruise. Fourth question. Everyone just wanted to talk to Tom. It was getting a little embarrassing. He found it embarrassing. He said, guys, jump in. So I did this technique, which I do on... Because quite often people are asking questions to other people, is I jump in on the tail end of a question, which is a very good technique for people to use. If they say, big name, here's a question, you can jump in. Can I just add to what Tom said there and say this, that, and the other? You can always tail end on a question, and then you just get some words in somewhere, and then you sit down and think, well, I thought, and I did that, and I thought, well, that's it for me. And it had gone on some time, and then this guy got up and said, Eddie Izzard, you said Hitler was a mass-murdering fuckhead in your stand-up. Do you still stand by your words? And I realized instantly that this wasn't an attack. This was someone just giving me an open gift. And I said, yes, absolutely, because he kidnapped the country. I've come up with this phrase that he kidnapped Germany. Germany before 1933 was imperialist. We were all imperialist in Europe. Since 1945, they tried to be exemplary. For 12 years, they were kidnapped by this mass-murdering fuckhead. And I said, the real Germany, Germany was there before 1933. And it was just after Obama had come down, just before he became president. He'd done a speech to 250,000 Germans. And I said, the real Germany and the real Germans were there before 1933. They're since 1945. And they're the ones out there, the 250,000 that were watching Barack Obama. And that's the Germany that I strongly believe is here to stay. And then it was a big round of applause, end of press conference. So I mic dropped the end of the Valkyrie press conference, which I was quite happy with.
So, I mean, your interest in the Second World War, though, it's not unlike my... I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast, haven't you?
About 40 episodes of yours.
Right, so...
Only 40.
I mean, yeah, I mean...
You've got a long way to go, to be fair.
They barely got your beginner's badge there.
We should actually think about doing that, shouldn't we? Give people little badges once they get past so you can get your bronze medal. Your bronze badge when you get to, I don't know, what, 100?
Yeah, I'd like to add it to my bronze survival swimming. I would like the bronze.
I think, well, you're a Lance Corporal. I think that's how we do it. You've got your one stripe if you've listened to Force.
Only when you've topped 700 do you get to officer class.
But I've also listened to Al reading the Battle of Britain one, which goes very wide on that. And I'm just listening to Normandy 44, not because I wanted to come on and have a chat with you guys, but just because I listen to these, and I have listened to the Anthony Beevor ones, and I'm a dyslexic person, so reading it takes forever for me, so I just have people read them. And Al, you read very well, very bright and up front, the way you were reading it.
Thank you.
He does a marvellous job.
He does a marvelous job. Right at the end, you did a chat with James. You chatted with James about just summing up the book and everything. And also, just so you know, at the end of that audiobook, it suddenly cuts to another book. It cuts to some other thing. I think Burma. So they can change that online. They can put out a bit of software that can actually. But you get actually the end of the chat for thing, and you get the end of Burma, which is what's that doing on here? But anyway, just so you know.
Well, maybe it's a plug for another book.
It does seem like a plug. There we go. But
well, thank you for listening to it.
No, well, you have a very good way about it. I like it. I'm going to listen to all of it now, and then I'll report back. But you say, well, I'm not going to change any of it. But no, it is because I like the fact you went wide. I like the fact that I was a certain Battle of the Atlantic in there.
Well, micro to macro and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but also the things that you've said over the time on your podcast, that the fact that everyone goes, oh, blitzkrieg, 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 but that's what Napoleon was doing, and surely that was what Alexander the Great was doing. Let's just move faster than the other guy. And also, if you've been preparing for war, everyone in Germany is preparing for war. Anyone who's Nazi positive, if that's a phrase one could use. I think I am Nazi positive.
That's a great phrase. I really like that. I'm definitely going to use that again. Are you Nazi positive?
No, I'm very much humanity positive and Nazi negative. And but those kids going into school were getting Nazi indoctrination all the way through. So what's that? 6 years before they hit 39. And if you said 12 or 13, no wonder the SS Hitler Youth was so amazing, because teenage kids can do most of what adult kids can do. You just give them that, and they also don't know fear. The fact that teenagers don't know fear, they just say, well, we're going to get medals, we're going to get this, we're going to get that. And also this idea that everyone got better at fighting that war as the time went on. And normally we were expected, Churchill was expecting France to hold out for a lot longer, and that just didn't happen. So this didn't have time to get up to speed. And so it's not rocket science what Blitzkrieg was. It was just, if you've been practicing for it and getting ready for ages, you'll be way ahead of the curve.
Well, yeah, the other thing that sort of slightly proves that there's nothing particularly new about it is the fact that the main crossing point over the River Meuse is exactly the same in 1940 as it is in 1914, as it is in 1870. I mean, it's not just that they choose the crossing point of the Meuse at Sedan. It is the exact same crossing point for there's 3 crossing points in May 1940 where they cross at Sedan, but the number one main one where Guderian crosses over is the very same that it was twice before.
Because it gives you the high ground into... Anyway, I mean, it's
there's good practical reasons for it, but it does suggest that there's kind of not that much original about it. We've done this before, boys, let's do it again. It's that kind of approach, isn't it?
I've listened to audiobooks where some people have talked about the Meuse River, and I keep repeating, no, it's Meuse, it's the Meuse. I talk to the audiobook. If people get pronounced, oh yeah, I've got to tell you, it's milk. It's milk. You've been arguing milk.
Oh,
just
milk.
like you'd think it would be. Not milch, but milk, I believe. But also,
milk.
It could even be milk.
Yeah, it means milk. It means milk. So it's like Harvey Milk in the San Francisco politician, and it's Harvey Milk, but it's milk. And just in case because I know you've already talked about that, so you're not going to go back to that. But also there's a thing is that the pronunciation in Berlin will be different to the pronunciation in Munich, and
yeah,
of course, like it would be in Scotland or Newcastle to London and Cornwall. So it's interesting on that.
Okay, well now we know.
Yes, now you know. Now that you've dealt with it and you're not going back there ever again.
But also, the other thing is, I mean, I just find that sort of, speaking in a German accent really, really funny. Al can do it really, really well. He whenever we're in Germany and we need someone to read out a German notice, Al does it, and he does it absolutely fantastically. But
Yeah, I've got it down.
But milk. It just sounds better.
It's milk. It's like ich. It's ich bin ein Berliner. It's milk.
Well, of course,
milk.
but it just sounds funny, doesn't it? It's just...
Well, did you study it at school, Al? Did you?
Yeah, I did an O level in it, so it's a very long time ago. But my elder sister is fluent because we have Austrian cousins. So she speaks Austrian. Yeah. Well, my grandmother was from Salzburg, and I've family. Yeah. So I've family in Vienna, and she went to live with them.
But they weren't Nazi negative, were they?
They
were Nazi negative. Were they Nazi positive?
They were Nazi negative. My grandmother got out with because my grandfather was the BBC's man in that part of the world and lodged with my grandmother's mother. They met, and then he brought her back before the Anschluss. And so she worked in the Black Radio with Sefton Delmer, doing, reading stuff out as far as I know. So anyway, my elder sister is completely fluent, but she speaks Austrian German, so she says "zwo" instead of "zwei." She talks Austrian, really. So yeah, I mean, so the Germans around, and my father did about 10 years ago did night school and learned it because he never spoke German. They never spoke German at home because when he was a kid, in the 1940s, you didn't want to be wandering around Woburn or wherever it was they lived, near Bedford, speaking German. Although that part of Bedfordshire was full of foreign governments, so you had lots of Czechs there and lots of Poles and Austrians and Germans and people. But anyway, yeah, so I do speak a bit of German. Oh,
du kannst ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen, das ist sehr gut.
Ja, ein sehr klein bisschen, ja. Aber I'm good at ordering off a menu, aren't I, Jim? I mean, I'm very handy for that.
You're amazing at it. You're absolutely amazing at it.
Zwei Hexe bitte schön and all that, yeah.
But I'm now on my 1,114th day streak on Italian Duolingo, which I'm very proud of. I'm still pretty crap, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, James, I can give you the tip on how to get the language. You have to get a gig. You have to go to write a book in Italian. Why are you doing Italian? You just loved it? You got a family?
Yeah, because I end up writing about it a lot, and I really love it, and I love the place, and I also just think gave up French at O level, never done a language since, and I'm a bit embarrassed about it, and I just thought it'd be a good thing to do, and I love it. I really enjoy it.
To you or anyone, the Duolingo, all the language things are great, but the real thing is immersion. Immersion is the key.
Of course.
If you can get a gig there, I mean, can you write a book there where you're interacting with a lot of Italian people and they switch everything off and they're just giving you Italian 24/7?
Well, the bottom line is, the children are getting a little bit older. There's nothing to stop us spending a year over there soon.
And also, it's interesting, at school you get taught, I was taught, my generation, I'm a little older than you guys, it was 90% written and 10% oral when you're learning.
Right.
And then you get there and it's 90% oral and 10% written. It's completely inverse. Who the hell goes and writes a thing? You go to a shop and write stuff down,
But that was the thing about, I did A-level French, and we went from the O-level, where we did talk a lot, and there was a oral component and all that. And then A-level French, we were having to read Jean-Paul Sartre and write, it was basically a literature paper, and you had to read Sartre plays and Francois Mauriac and all this, and basically do it. It was like an English A-level, but it was in French, which was completely beyond.
And presumably, you weren't sure whether you were reading Surrealism or whether you just translated it wrong.
You just didn't know. To read Sartre and to understand what's really going on, you need to be completely on top of French. Like totally on top of French, and also know what tradition he's in and all this sort of stuff. And I just wanted to learn how to speak French. I just wanted to learn how to speak French. And the trail went cold for A-level, it's a long time ago.
Well, because I was, I was on our European question that still floats around our country, I was more positive of making connections than breaking connections. So after something happened in that referendum, I decided to go. I don't write my shows. I stand-up shows. I tend to develop them by workshopping them and endlessly workshopping. So I decided to go to France and do it in Paris. So I was 2 months in Paris. And then a month in Germany as well, just making up stuff, going, Bonsoir Paris, je suis ici pour improviser. Oui, pourquoi the fuck pas, baby? And they like that. And then I went to Germany and said the same, Improvisation auf Deutsch. Ja, warum the fuck nicht? And that sounds very good in German.
I've done the pub landlord in French, which involved.
Have you?
Yeah. There's a gig called Altitude Festival, which is on a ski resort, and I went and did that. And they had an Anglo-French gig, so So I basically it's quite a while ago, so the app wasn't very good, but I got like a Collins app on my phone, because I can work the verbs. If I know what the verbs are, I can make them work. You know, I know what the endings mean in French and all that, so I can work them. So I looked up the verbs I needed and the adjectives and the words I needed, and went on and did it. Basically, it's a transliteration of a whole chunk of pub landlord stand-up. And what was amazing is I know the audience were being generous given the circumstances, but it worked. Because the core idea was the same, so it worked, and that was a really eye-opening moment. Because I'm often told what I do is very, very British, whereas actually I think it's very, very parochial. Parochial is universal, as an iron law of comedy. It worked, la bière pour les hommes et le vin blanc pour les femmes, and yeah, they've seen a guy like that. That exists.
Yeah.
Well, they actually, in fact, they love it in Germany and France. Me and my brother were like, my brother's the expert in languages. In France and Germany, they very much go, men do this, but women do this. Men do this, but women do this, which we all find slightly, because they do have fantastic comedy now in Germany and France, but there was a substrata, a basic strata of, well, men do this and women do this. Les femmes et les hommes, les femmes do. There was a caveman show that a guy in America came up with, the caveman show,
yes.
and they loved that in Germany. Then there's a gay version of that they did as well. And men do this, but men do this. But yeah, touring France in French is just beautiful. I had this rule that if you don't know the words in French or another language, well, maybe not all over, but Latin languages, just try it in English with an accent. So I was trying to say I was focused and I was in Lyon or somewhere. And I said to j'ai un focus, like I have a focus. And my friend, Yassine Bell, who's the French comedian who was touring with me, he said, you've just told them you have a false arse. And that's not the way. So sometimes it goes very wrong. Sometimes it works. But I wanted to say this about people, Austrian Link and stuff. Everyone know Casablanca. And when you watch it again...
I watched it with my daughter just the other day, who's 16.
Well, you'll know that Conrad Veidt is... you may not know his name, but he's the guy playing the very full-blown Nazi. And his name is Conrad Veidt. And then Paul Henreid is how you pronounce it in German, but I think Henried is because everyone gets confused. English speakers get confused on the E's and I's.
He's Victor Laszlo.
Yeah, Victor Laszlo. And you'd think, well, Victor Laszlo, I like that kind of guy. That's a Czech guy, and I'd like that guy, in the characters. And that Conrad Veidt, no, I don't like him. He seems like a standard Nazi person. And then, now they were both filming this in L.A. Conrad Veidt was very Nazi negative on the Nazis. He'd got out. He's the first out, and he brought, when his friend who played Victor Laszlo, Paul Henreid, wanted to get out, he got him out too. They're both very anti-fascist and anti-Nazis, and one had got the other one out.
Was Henreid Czech, or was he in real life, or was he German?
No, he's German. There are two Germans there, both friends. One had got the other one out. Because, you had to have a sponsor to get them in. He got to England first, Conrad Veidt. Conrad
Veidt was Colonel Strasser.
Yes. That's it, yeah. It's an accidentally brilliant film. It was just another film that they made, but it all landed, all the things landed up perfectly to become this thing.
I have such a crush on Ingrid Bergman, though. I mean, she's so gorgeous in it. Don't you think?
Yes, no, she is. She's absolutely gorgeous, and she got blackballed by America because she left her husband and left her kids, I think, and ran off with another guy. So
it weren't. She had an affair with Robert Capa in Paris at the end of the war.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But, yes, I was going to mention this thing. This could sound like a plug, but it's a good plug because there's Pete Waterman has got this show called Little Trains, Big Names, and it's people with profile who've got model railways. And James May, I know you've had James on. His one's going out tomorrow on More 4, and Jules Holland's got his. And I'm not sure what James is going to be like, but Jules was a very personal one, and it was in his house, and it's great. He's got this huge room upstairs. But I had a rail with my brother and my father. We had this railway, and then we put it in a box as you do when you're about 13, and it ends up in the attic. And then I decided, instead of selling it, to give it over to the Bexhill Museum, because I grew up in Bexhill, near Hastings, near Eastbourne and Brighton. And they made it, and I said, here's some money, go and make it fabulous. So they made it fabulous in the Bexhill Museum, and that's a little push button
How
thing.
brilliant.
And then, so that's kind of nice. That's just railways. That's nothing to do with what your podcast is about. But then I said, can we do one with a winter thing? Can we overlay winter on it? Can we spray winter on? They said, you spray it on, you're never going to get off. It's just going to be winter forever. So he said, we'll do another railway for you. And I said, well, I haven't got any ideas for another railway. But then I was talking to my dad before he died, and he talked about the winter of 1940. Came back from being evacuated to St Albans from Bexhill. It was so rough because I know you've talked about Operation Zelu and how it wasn't really going to happen, but everyone thought it was going to happen because not only was my dad evacuated by the government, etc., but my grandmother, his mother, and his grandmother, my gran and great-gran, they evacuated themselves to St Albans. They were so scared that, because if you think about it, it was palpable that they were coming. It really was.
Well, and if they were going to come, it was going to be at Bexhill, let's face it.
It was. Bexhill was right on the thing. From Eastbourne to Ramsgate, that was, I've listened to your...
What was it?
I think that's in your Battle of Britain thing. It's right up to Eastbourne. Then you get into the cliffs, and then it starts from Brighton onwards up to Isle of Wight. I think I'm just repeating your lines here. So Bexhill was right in the front, and we had scaff bars on the front, and it was a heavy-duty snowing 1940. So I said, Dad, we're going to make a Bexhill 1940 winter wartime model railway. And so we've made it in N gauge, and it's at the Bexhill Museum, and people are coming in droves now. Pete Waterman just covered it, and you can see that on More 4 if people look at it. But it's got bombed out houses, it's got a Spitfire, down high ankle. Yeah, it's got gun emplacements. It's got all the scaff bars on the front. Just scaffolding was going to stop the Nazi tanks, which are going to stop them for about a minute. And it's Bexhill. And Spike Milligan was there at that same time, bizarrely, with a gun up on Galley Hill. And that's covered as well. And he was playing with his band and having sex in doorways. Actually, I think he was having so much sex. He was having sex in houses rather than doorways. But people, all the way up Devonshire Road, which is... It's a very, very quiet seaside town, very, very conservative. But sex was happening in every single doorway. From what I've read, which I think is fascinating. It was the most exciting thing that ever happened to Bexhill, and most of the Bexhill people weren't actually there initially. And it's just a wonderful railway. It's there, and all the money goes to the museum. And so, if people want to visit, well,
it sounds absolutely fantastic. It sounds actually superior to Reichsmarshal Goering's train set as well.
We were competing with him.
The pictures of it are amazing. I mean, they're quite extraordinary. And plainly, the snow is permanent. Once you put the snow on, that's that.
There was so much snow that winter of 1940 that Dad said, this is what he was saying to me, and that gave me the idea. He said they had to compact it and just drive on top of the snow. They were chucking it into the sea. I had this image of lorries dumping into the sea snow, just a weird thing. And also he came back and his grandmother, my great-grandmother, had died just 7 days before he got there. He was very close to her. Those days of people used to sleep in the same beds. He used to share a bed with the grandmother, and she was profoundly deaf, and so would, I think, talk to each other in basic sign language. I don't think Dad knew sign language, but he was very close to her. Suddenly she's gone from life, and she'd tried to evacuate herself out. She was that scared, and maybe the pressure had got to her. And so I said, Dad, we're going to have an image of a little boy giving a present to an older lady, and that's going to be you giving your present to your grandmother, and we'll have that on the railway set, and it's there forever. This little boy giving over a present that never happened, but could have happened or should have happened, and so it's got that point. And the sounds, we've taken samples from 1930s Southern trains, the sounds, and the kids can press the buttons, so it's fun first.
Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing.
It is. It worked really well. We thought, people like the family is our family railway, but this they've just gone nuts on. And I'd like people to see it because then money comes into the museum and people go to Bexhill and the Delaware Pavilion's in it and all that stuff.
We just need to take a quick break. We'll see you in a tick.
Suzy, tell me, so where did your interest in the war develop from? Is that just because every regarding person of a certain age living in England naturally is interested in the Second World War, or I mean, was it sort of watching the Battle of Britain movie and Commando comics and things, or where did it come from?
It was those comics, and it was Battle of Britain film, and at the end of the Battle of film, if you remember, unusually it says where it's shot. First of all, it has shot live in Spain and in Britain, in England, and it says, and also at Pinewood Studios, Ivor Heath, Bucks, and I was trying to get in the film industry, aged 13, 14 at this point, and I copied that down, and I found out where Pinewood Studios was, and I went up there and tried to break in to get into the film industry because I think it's because of that very film. But on the real answer to your question, I think some people are fascinated, some people aren't. There's two I've realized there's two enormous wars that I am semi-encyclopedic on. One is this, and one is the Civil War, which I've heard you talk about, American Civil War, and it's not necessarily your in your area. But I've realized, I said, why are these two? They seem quite different, but they're both against racist ideologies, which I think I just would have signed up. First World War I find a lot more confusing and a lot more, everyone's just murdering everyone and no one's going anywhere. But it was to try to stop the Nazis. And of course, the Civil War was not initially to stop slavery, but it was to keep the Union going together. But slavery was underpinning it. And there were abolitionists and there were anti-slavery people. But the film Lincoln and Lincoln Team of Rivals is the one to look at, because Lincoln was amazing because he was just a lawyer when he came in to be president. He wasn't a senator coming in. He wasn't a governor coming in. He was a one-time congressman who'd been a congressman 12 years before for 2 years and had not made any splash at all. And he came in and he was the right guy to be in. They all thought he was an idiot or just a luck or the compromise candidate. But in fact, he really could do it. And him and Grant, U.S. Grant, is the two most amazing ones out of that. But anyway, I was going to be in forces, but then I thought, which war will they send me to? Can I choose my wars? And of course, you can't be in forces and just choose. Oh, I'll go to this one. I won't go to that one. Can I go to the one after that one? That's not how it works.
You're going to Iraq, son. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, you're going to wherever they send you to, or not, because if you take the war before, the American-Mexican War before, which was the one where a lot of the soldiers from West Point, they all had got their first battle experience.
Yeah, that's right.
In that one.
1848.
Tecumseh Sherman couldn't get in there. He just couldn't get to the war. They wouldn't. They sent him on boats through the Panama Canal up to San Francisco. Pleading. You can imagine pleading, begging. Can you put me in the thing? No, you're not in. And Grant got there, but he says you're in charge of you're a quartermaster. But I can fight. I can lead. No, quartermaster. But I can no. Yeah, and how these we know about this from everything you've written about the military. Some people are brilliant, some people aren't. But that's the same in all walks of life. And they were both held back. And then Sherman and Grant ended up being the powerhouse of the Union side, along with Sheridan, who was a lot younger than him, about 10 years younger than him. And McPherson would have been great as well.
I wonder why there was never a Sheridan tank.
There was a Sheridan tank, Jim. Don't panic.
Okay, phew.
There was.
Forgot about that. Did it come before the Sherman or after?
It comes after the. I'm
going to look it up right now.
The Sherman. It's the M551. It's a light tank, so it follows on from the Stuart sort of idea. It's a
okay. I thought that was a Chaffee.
No, the Chaffee's slightly heavier.
Okay.
So, but is there a Grant tank?
It's the Bulldog. There's definitely a Grant. There's the Grant. The Grant. Well, that's the thing. Is the M Grant Lee. There's two variants of the same thing called.
But it's not Second World War, so no wonder I don't know it.
Of course you don't know, because exactly. It's not a Second World War tank. The Chaffee. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not interested in it. That's dead to me.
And the Grant's the thing that precedes the Sherman, so it's the same chassis, the same power plant. And it's before they figure out how to get a turret on top that works properly. So the Grant has a 75mm main gun, and then
but it's only got a little tiny traverse, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, a tiny traverse, and then it's got a cannon on the turret, and they come to the desert in 42, and the British are, Sherman Rangers are going around in Grant Lees, aren't they, or Lees or Grants? I kind of the difference is subtle between a Lee and a Grant. They're the same configuration. And they modelled it on the French tanks of the early French tanks, which have a main gun and a secondary gun. The Americans go to the French for that advice, or look to the French example, and then the Sherman follows, which is the same body, the same chassis,
same wheels,
but a different turret. Once they figured out how to do a cast turret that will traverse fully. Jim, you write about them using Lees in Burma, where they
they came into their own.
They're obsolete,
absolutely fantastic there
in Europe and the desert, but in Burma they're really, really useful.
Yeah, it really comes into its own in Burma because the ranges tend to be a lot shorter. Where that old that sort of side 75 gun is really good, and also the machine guns they have on them are just really good for what they're doing. And the Japanese don't really have anything that can knock them out because they don't really have anti-tank guns because it's not really part of their. I mean, they do, but not really, and not in any number. And a lot of their bunkers are kind of wooden, so rather than concrete. So these things are actually quite effective, and it's a great use of them because they've got lots of them left over from early production, and no one wants them in Europe anymore. So let's send them to Burma. What's not to like?
Can I throw something in for what I said earlier? The Casablanca Saturday Night Live. Kate McKinnon she's brilliant. Al is a student of comedy. You like her stuff. She plays. Is it Ilsa? Who's
Elsa? Yeah,
Elsa, the love interest, but she does this very weird accent, and she's done amazing. Different sketches. She tried for ages to get in Saturday Night Live. They just wouldn't have her, and suddenly they thought, well, we've got to have it. And she's won Emmys and stuff. But it's her version of Saturday Night Live, Kate McKinnon, and it's brilliant. And her name just went out of my head for a second. Yeah. But I have a follow-up question to that, which got nothing to do with that, and I want to see your opinion on this. It's go left to right, but it's an overarching World War II thing, or maybe a sort of early, a 1900s question that. In the end, where the Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact, and they go in, and they say they got on kind of. It was easy for each side to understand each other. Obviously, none of us sort of like what they were doing at all. The Nazis, the Soviets saying, "You're going to take this side over, and we're going to kill people here, and you take that side, and you kill people over there." And I just remember saying that because of the murders happened on obviously on the Nazi side, but on the Soviet side against the Polish people there, which we know of. And I just wondered, in the end, this National Socialist idea, it was supposed to be about the people, but in fact it's about one guy. It was about Hitler's ego. And then the Soviet thing is supposed to be about the people, but it's about one guy, and that's Stalin's ego. And it's almost the same thing. They're almost at the flip side of the coin, but right around the circle, they almost joined up at the back. And in the end, Hitler started copying what the Russians were doing because they put those political officers into the troops. And it's an unusual, it just seemed to me that, particularly between Stalin and Hitler, they were just running them almost in the same way. And doing mass murders left, right, and centre.
Yes, they're certainly they're sort of simpatico to each other in a strange way, aren't they? I mean, what's interesting is the language with which the Soviets dismantle what's their part of Poland is all framed in revolution and class war and all that sort of stuff. But they're effectively doing the same thing, aren't they? They denude Poland of its ruling. I worked with Melga Droik recently, and her grandfather was a senator in the Polish Senate, and was one of the people that was liquidated by Stalin because he was ruling class. But it's the same. They're doing the same thing, aren't they, Jim? They're decapitating the Polish state, removing the people who might have any influence and power, and installing their own.
Yeah, but the difference is it's not racist. It's
not racist. Although it's
political. I suppose.
It's centered around class, isn't it? Rather than race, but it kind of ends up.
But that's a big difference, is because Hitler is obviously a rabid racist. I mean, he's not just anti-Semitic. He's anti-Slav, everything. Anyone who's not Aryan.
And you would have thought he'd be anti-Japanese, wouldn't he? Because you would have thought the Japanese doesn't come into his Aryan.
Yes, which just goes to show how completely sort of rotten the whole thing is, because there's this sort of inconsistencies on the whole thing.
But he can flick a switch.
Trust me, if he'd sort of conquered a whole of the European and Eurasian landmass, I don't think Japan would stay on his side. Put it that way.
No, but if you're Ukrainian in the 30s, you're on the receiving end of it, essentially a racist colonial policy from Moscow, aren't you anyway? So, yes, it is built around class rather than race, but it manifests itself essentially in
the same vein.
In the same thing, and it's kind of in racist forms. And then after the war, of course, he brings about, there's the Doctor's Purge and all that sort of stuff, where he's obsessed with Jews as well. So he ends up in the same place, essentially. And that's the fundament of a lot of far end of Soviet anti-Semitism comes from Stalin after the war. So it is peculiar how they sort of meet in the middle. And there are these amazing photos of Red Army people celebrating with German officers, high command people in Poland, meeting and drinking together and essentially high-fiving each other at the successful destruction of Poland. Because after all, Stalin had been humbled by the Poles in the Soviet-Polish War. And the Germans regarded Poland as an affront to the existence of Poland as an affront to Germany in itself. So they're both there's enough motivation, and their methods sort of coincide purely through ruthlessness, I think.
Yeah, sure, but also, sort of extreme left wing and right wing. It's not a straight line, is it? It's more like the horns of the buffalo, sort of curve back in again. It's a big sort of tiny little gap in the middle.
Horseshoe theory, yeah.
It's like extremely cool and looking like a dickhead. I used to talk about that. That if you are extremely cool, you're essentially looking like a dickhead. But they can say to other dickheads, "No, you don't know why you're looking cool. You actually look like a dickhead."
That's very good. A horseshoe theory of cool. That's very strong. I love it.
I think one of the things I think is different though is I think Nazism is basically La La Land. I mean, it's basically sort of a fantasy world where they're just sort of making up as they go along, and to a certain extent, and they're creating this. They're creating heritage myths. They're creating all sorts of stuff that's going on. They're creating all sorts of things to sort of justify how they should do things. It's just pure fantasy, and it is built on incredibly shaky foundations, which is why sort of very quickly it all starts to crumble. The sort of iron will of the Führer, and then the kind of fear of Armageddon is what keeps the masses going in the war, kind of after Stalingrad and the Sports Palace speech by Goebbels in February 1943. But it is still the world of the Nazis is a fantasy world, I think. Whereas I don't think you can quite say the same thing about Soviet Russia. It's a very chillingly brutal world, but it's not a fantasy world. It's much more sort of real. It's every bit as warped, but I don't think it's...
Oh, I don't know. I think like Lysenkoism and all that sort of stuff, the way that the science ends up drifting because it has to move away from established, Western modes of thought. I think there's a big enough dollop of fantasy in the Soviet model of things.
I don't know. I would just always think the sort of difference between, I don't know. There's just a sort of cool chill to kind of Sovietness. There's obviously Nazism is extremely chilling, but there does seem to me to be kind of fundamental differences, even though they are kind of even despite the horseshoe theory.
Well, there's also the thing of there's Lenin's version of what communism is supposed to be, and then Stalin, which it was much more wrapped up in Stalin and the godlike Stalin. And even I don't think Lenin said before, as he was dying, "Watch out for Stalin." And then Stalin just killed everyone, took everyone aside, and Trotsky got him ice picked and all that kind of stuff. It was a cult of the individual, and the Hitler myth. The Hitler myth, and is it Ian Kershaw's his idea of just making them into this godlike person, and they made Stalin into a godlike person. Or he encouraged his people, or Beria did it, or whoever did that.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're coming to character here, aren't we? And Stalin's Russia is drenched in paranoia, which is really what it comes down to, isn't it? Which is his characteristic. And Hitler's is this sort of complete fantasy view of the world. I mean, it's the thing, we've talked about this often on the podcast before. At the end of the war, when Himmler takes people out of Auschwitz, doesn't he, Jim? And he offers them as a bargaining chip to the Allies, saying, look, I can save some Jews for you if you want, because he really believes that the Jews run the world. So he thinks if he goes to the Americans and offers them some Jews, they'll go, brilliant, okay, that's what our bosses want. And that people are actually thinking like that. That's such a late stage of the war, in the very top of the Nazi structures, I think is amazing. Is one of those things that's truly incredible and very revealing.
Well, it makes you realise what they've lost, because they're run by kind of shit for brains like him. I mean, absolutely insane.
But did Himmler actually think that, or did he just think, I'm going to get some people who are Jewish and out of the thing? And
no, I genuinely think he thought that.
I think he really thought that. Yeah.
He really thought that the Allies would be open to bargaining, because why would the Allies want this world from the Soviet Union?
They could well be up for bargaining. He was going to say, when he met Eisenhower, does he do the Hitler salute or does the military salute? Stuff like this. Yeah. And Heil Hitler, going around saying Heil Hitler, which they had to do after the Valkyrie attempt and everything, I realised essentially going around saying hello Hitler. I know he isn't quite saying that, but it's just...
Hi
Hitler. Hello Hitler.
Hiya.
Hello Hitler. Hello Hitler.
How does that feel? I mean, when you're dressed up in all the kit and everyone else is dressed up in all the... I know it's an acting job, and so you're not getting lost in it, but how does that feel?
Well, it was tricky. I had a 6-page scene with Tom Cruise on my first day, and I was just getting used to wearing a general's uniform. So that was
you look very dapper in it, I have to say. I mean,
you can see that one photograph there. It was yeah, that's the photograph I liked. It's the first day. It was a tough morning for me, but I tell you some weird things about it. So being in the uniform didn't hugely bother me, because I knew he was he was a signals guy. He'd been in the First World War. My guy, General Erich Feldgiebel, was not the powerhouse of Nazis, but he'd sort of gone with them, and he was probably a nationalist. And I went for a run in the middle of the night, actually, up to the place where he was executed after the attempt on the thing. So I went to find that prison, which is kind of weird, running through a rather hot and humid 2 a.m. Berlin. And the only things that were open were Greek and Turkish cafes, which I thought would piss Hitler off. So I was very pleased with that. But I was just around that, and I could only talk in German to people. I was saying, "Is it in here? The U-Bahn is here." Oh yeah, when I was learning German, I performed there for 2 months, and I found this great thing which anyone should do. Sometimes the temperatures go way down in Berlin, -20 or something, -50, -20. So if you get on the S-Bahn, S41 or S42, S41 and Sidesvierzig, and it goes round like our central line in London, but above ground, so you can actually see Berlin. I was having my German lessons while looking out over Berlin with snow. Again, with snow.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
I'm obsessed with snow. But the thing we were filming, I think it's the old Luftwaffe building. It's still there. Still looks very, kind of full-blown and Nazi. I think it was made for the Nazis. Anyway.
Is this the Reichsministry?
I think the Reichsministry.
Yeah, that is definitely still there, as is the propaganda ministry.
Yeah, and the outside of the is it Tegel Airport? The airport that's again looks like it's built for them. If it wasn't built for them. It's not Tegel. It's the other one. Can't remember what it's called.
Yes,
but we were at
the big sort of curved one.
Big curved one, and there were tons of Nazi flags out. Now, one thing is you start getting used to Nazi flags, and you just sort of ignore them.
Tempelhof,
that's what it's called. Yeah. So my brother was there, my dad was there. And we got photographs, and everyone's just happy, and we're doing a film, taking photographs, and we realised in the background there's all these bloody Nazi flags, which is bizarro. And the other thing was there was lots of German people in Berlin who were dressed in German uniforms. And during a break between filming, my brother was hanging around. He went to the loo, and there were a lot of German soldiers in the loo. So he was having a pee in one of those, men's loos things, and a lot of German soldiers in German uniforms talking German were also having a pee, which he found very psychologically odd. Like it was suddenly he was in a film or something, So that was.
Can you imagine?
That was just bonkers.
You did shoot it in Berlin, so it's the place and the recreation of the time. That's quite extraordinary.
And the Bendlerhof, is it the Bendler building? The Bendlerhof?
Bendler Block.
Yeah, that's where they were executed, 4 of them, including von Stauffenberg. And they had to bargain for a long time to get permission to do that. And it was recreated in exactly the same place, and I was there to see that. So that was quite moving. And just a lot of some really good, very good German actors there, British actors, Dutch actors, and it was just, and I'm this kid who'd been trying to get into films for ages, and I also know a lot about World War II, and we're there in Berlin doing that. And
it must have been, I don't know whether fun's the right word, but it must have been very exhilarating, I should think.
Yes, it is. It's fun making a film. I mean, I've made horror films. I've done ones, the Hannibal Lecter TV series, and that's horrific what you're doing. But you're making I just love making films. It's my first love. Comedy is something I came across along the way, but yeah. And Berlin has just got all this history just lying there, and it's got GDR history lying about there.
Yeah, of course.
And the wall and stuff. And there's as you guys will know, there's the bit where Hitler's bunker thing, and they took that apart. So it's just a car park. But they've got a little no, it's not a plaque. It's definitely not a plaque. It's just a board that says it was around here, guys. When this happened, because they're trying to get not have neo-Nazis coming around to it. And I was showing someone. I was saying, look, that's where it happened. And I said it was probably about there because I could work it out from my general sense of where things were. And as I was pointing to the area where Hitler's body was set fire to, a dog was peeing on that area, and I thought, that dog's very clever. Where that dog's peeing, that's where it was. So I think that dog
that's
knew
perfect.
something.
Have you read Look Who's Back?
No, what's that?
Oh my God, you're in for such a treat.
I was going to ask that because when you said how annoying Hitler might find Turkish people. So basically, it's the story. The idea is Hitler wakes up in Berlin
in 2013 in a car park.
In 2013 in the car park and is back.
And he can't remember what's happened between
Doesn't remember what's happened. And he stumbles around Berlin, and one of the bits he sees a dry cleaner called Blitz Dry Cleaners, and he thinks, You see, our method of war is now world famous. And look, Turkish people work here as slaves for us and all this sort of thing. And,
it's really funny.
And it's written from his point of view. So the author went straight into, read a lot of, read Mein Kampf. And so it's written in that style. And there's a bad film of it, but basically the book's brilliant. I read it in Berlin, which felt like
it's so funny.
And he ends up a comedy star playing the character of Hitler. And
he has a Jewish assistant, doesn't he?
Exactly, this bizarre, ironic space where people think, oh, he's just being ridiculous. And he means it all. And it's the most extraordinary book. And very evocative of Berlin itself, but also, this Hitler crash landing in 2013 in Berlin and having to get his head round where Germany is. We must have won is of course his assumption. It's an incredible book.
It's so funny. It makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable that you're laughing, but it is really funny, and it's sort of okay because it's written by a German. But anyway, honestly, I think you're in for a treat. I'd rush out and get it immediately. You have my permission to put Normandy 44 on hold.
There will be an audio. There must be an audiobook of it.
I can't. Now I'm in Normandy. I have to keep going through Normandy 44 now. That's.
You've done a number of films, though, haven't you? War films, because you also did 6 Minutes to Midnight, which I really enjoyed. I have to say.
Yeah, but 6 Minutes was, it's a fascinating thing. There was a school in Bexhill-on-Sea. Doesn't have to all centre around Bexhill-on-Sea, but just two of the things I'm talking about today do. And it was a girls' school, and von Ribbentrop's daughter was there. We know, and there was a princess, it was Himmler's goddaughter was also there. We know that the kids were throwing apples at them and stuff, and they all evacuated. They all went away in 1938 when everyone thought it was all going to kick off. And then they came back, and they said we're going to win the war. The girls were saying we're going to win the war. It was. So the story is about them, and it's a slightly fictitious story. The school existed, the girls existed, and then we put a story on top of it about what happened at that time, just as war was kicking off. So it was great, and so that's all true. And they had this badge. The thing that I first thought was a badge, and it was the school badge, the Augusta Victoria College in Bexhill-on-Sea. It has that written on it, and it has a British flag, and it has a Nazi swastika on it. And I thought, holy cow, that's a film right there. And so that's what turned into the film, yeah. And that's also, at the museum, I think they have the details of that and some of the costumes of that. The costumes were we did facsimiles of the uniforms they used to wear. And there's a shot from the Times of all the girls lined up with Herr Blomberg, who was German defense minister, I think, at the time, at the crowning of George George VI, 37, just after Eddie VIII. After Eddie VIII, George VI. And they're all doing the Nazi salute up the thing. And I talked to one girl who was a British girl who'd been an au pair with them and helping out and stuff. And she'd gone up to the German embassy and she said they were, of course, all Sieg Heiling all around the place. I said, you went, were you? And she said, yes, I was. So there was a young English girl who'd got taken in, has got, enamored by that. And this is probably something I thought about me and maybe any of us. Would I, there but for the grace of humanity, go all of us, would I, if I'd grown up in Nazi Germany, would I have signed up? Or would I have, Sophie Scholl? Could I have been as brave as Sophie Scholl and her brother Hans Scholl, the Witte Rose, the White Rose group in Munich, the birthplace of the Nazis, and they got beheaded for leafleting. They got beheaded for leafleting. This needs to be remembered. And it's just so difficult to stand. Once he'd kidnapped the entire country, to stand up and say, no, you got hung, you got shot, you were into a concentration camp, you got murdered, guillotined. They were guillotined for leafleting. It's just such a horrific thing.
Well, it's the imponderable, though, isn't it? What would I have done if you'd had this? Which upbringing have you had? Because she was a sort of a nonconformist from a nonconformist family, wasn't she? So they were people who ran against the grain anyway. And I don't know that my upbringing would have run against the grain. It's sort of
you've got to believe you're standing on the side of the right, just haven't you? You've got to believe it.
Well, you have to.
You hope. I did a thing which was in France when I was 18. This doesn't really work, but it almost works. It was they repaired old buildings. So people from around Europe, maybe around the world, probably middle class parents, they would pay money for their kids to go over and learn French, and they would help repair buildings. But in fact, it seems like a scam because everyone you were hanging out with was from anywhere but France. The person running it was an Icelandic woman. And so the only word I learned, I was in the South, I was in Antibes, the millionaire's playground, and I learned this word, au boulot, which means work. Okay. And after 5 days, I was supposed to be there 2 weeks. After 5 days, I walked out, I thought with a very pithy line, I said, this is no way to run a slave labor camp. And I walked out the door. And I just, which I think was lost on everyone, but I thought it was
very funny.
Yeah, that is really funny.
It was a slave labor camp. But they were getting paid money for us to do the work. Just keep working, and it was really hot. It's the south of France, and you weren't allowed to go in the sea. You weren't allowed to go into town. I'm 18. It was in a castle, and it had huge, 100-foot walls, but they had this huge letterbox the size of a human. So I felt I could roll myself out the letterbox and go into town. So I think I was enamored with doing things my way. I'd broken into Pinewood, I'd broken into Shepperton Studios. I'd done very odd things and this is what linked me up with Special Forces. I just was interested. I was happy to do things in the way that it's not supposed to be done. So at the end, if you were Special Forces, you just wouldn't do the standard method. You'd think if you came up with a better idea. We were doing a cadet thing at school, and they said, you've got to make your way back over the thing using these trig references on this Ordnance Survey map. And me and this kid, Paul Wedge, I said to him, let's just get a bus. So we sat at the back of the bus with our guns, which I don't think is legal, but we sat at the back of the bus and all these schoolgirls staring at us, and we just took a bus back to the school, and then we just hid in our lockers back at the house until gave it enough time for most people to start getting back, and then otherwise it would look too wrong. But I just thought that's what you should do. Just think clever. Think clever.
That's that Dad's Army episode, isn't it? Brain versus Brawn, where they have to get a bomb into a building, and Sergeant Wilson puts it in the post. Sends it by post. They try all sorts of stuff. It turns out he's posted it.
That's not quite the Special Forces I was thinking of. But I'd heard that was supposed to be based on Warrington-on-Sea was supposed to be kind of Bexhill-on-Sea, but I don't think it was actually.
Well,
but it was because they used to go through Eastbourne, and then they go and it was the next stop. And we were kind of the next stop of Eastbourne, but Eastbourne is actually a terminus. So you have to back into it and then go back out the other way. Oh, there was another film I did. There's two other films I did, which is interesting to talk about. One is All the Queen's Men, which got kind of hammered by the critics, but it is about getting a Ning machine out, which was probably not true, but it was shot in Vienna, and the director's fantastic. He is an Oscar winner now for best foreign film, and he'd been Oscar nominated beforehand, but the critics just decided to round on this and say they didn't like it. But it was kind of a romp, but some good actors in it, and Matt LeBlanc's in it, and anyway, there's that film, and then there's The Castles in the Sky about the invention of radar, which I think was
yes. No, I have seen that.
Yeah, and he got.
No, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, my brother was positive on what my acting in that, which to get that out of my elder brother Mark is he gives compliments very. What's the word?
Sparely, is it?
Sparely, yes. His bedside manner is. No, that wasn't very good. Was it?
Did you played Watson Watt in that?
Yeah, so Robert Watson Watt. So I had to. His accent actually. I went for this because he's from north of Dundee, and he went to Dundee University. So I kind of based it around there. But yeah, Dundee, which is not Edinburgh, it's not Glasgow, but there's a lot of Glasgow people on the set. So I just stayed in the accent the entire time. But in fact, if you listen to his accent, it's kind of English. Because I think he had sort of old-fashioned English racism, saying Scots, Welsh, Northern Irish. No, it's got to be English. And so if you just make your accent English, then you'd probably get in easier. But the fact that he was doing weather and he thought, bouncing waves off cloud formations could work on aeroplanes, it's kind of an amazing thing. So we shot that, and it was with the Open University as well. So they checked all the science to make sure it was
spot on.
The director was going around saying, "No, it's not good for the story."
I mean, I'm not an expert on radar, but I didn't. I have to say, I didn't notice any howlers or anything. It all seemed to ring true.
Yes, because I've seen one of your videos where you do look for howlers, don't you? You go around looking and say, that.
Okay, yeah,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
well, no, you can't help it. You can't help it.
No.
You say, okay, that's wrong. Well, I didn't do it like that. It's awful. Yeah. It really ruins it.
Yeah, it's nice. So the Waterloo film that's got, not Waterloo, the Napoleon film coming out, is that in your military wheelhouse or?
Oh, yeah, no, I definitely want to watch it.
Yeah, but all the Napoleonic history people I follow, they're all up in arms about it. And Ridley Scott has said some sort of, he said, the first 2 books written about Napoleon, they're the ones you want to read. That all the rest are just like repeating, treading water, whatever. And he's really upset a ton of them, which is. But also by the same token, they're glad there's a film because it means people will be interested. So they're having to sort of take the rough, and it looks amazing. They're having to take with the rough with the smooth, basically.
But it just needs to be a 10-part TV series, doesn't it? You can't even scrape the top of the iceberg with all these auteurs that kind of make these films that last for 3.5 hours. That's the big thing for me. I haven't got time to go into cinema for 3.5 hours. I've got a novel to finish. God damn it!
Here's another thing for me to throw it to you two, which is my idea of the overcompensators. A man from Corsica becomes more French than the French. A man from Austria becomes more German than the German.
Yes.
A man from Georgia becomes more Russian than the Russians.
Yes.
Yeah?
That's a very interesting point. I never thought of that.
And that happens a lot, I think. The people who say, you think I'm not good enough to be this, I will show you. I will so overdo this thing that you're going to say, well, you're godlike. And
well, Winston Churchill's mother's American as well. I mean,
it's interesting. He really didn't want to associate with that, did he? Even though in the end he needed to be American. But having read a lot about Churchill, he never seemed to say, I've got to get there. I've got to get the accent. I've got to grab hold of this thing. He should have been. I wonder if he paid taxes, because if you're born there, you're supposed to pay taxes as well. But
I doubt that very much.
But he was born in the toilet at Woodstock, wasn't he? Yeah.
Burnham Palace, he was born.
Oh, he was born there. Yes. No, yes, he wasn't there. It's just his mother. Yeah, no, he's all right on that front.
He'd have wiggled out of it anyway.
Yeah, it's no, that is interesting. He does not really grab hold of his American thing, and even though he went there and he talked to both on Capitol Hill, he talked to the Senate and the House of Representatives, didn't he? That combined houses thing, chat. Wasn't he one of the few people? Was that after the war? Might have been after the war. With the
that was after the war,
I think. From Stettin in the Aegean. In the Baltic.
And then he did his Iron Curtain speech, didn't he? But that was in someone like Ohio, wasn't it?
From Stettin in the Baltic.
Yeah, he was. It is amazing. He was his speech patterns are all over the shop, but it became so distinctive, and his the words going with it. We will find them on the beaches. He takes it right down at places, and it's very. If you copy it, it's all over the shop.
And also, he does that Australian thing of turning everything into a question, of sort of going up at the end of a sentence as well. We shall never surrender.
But he was the right person at the right time. The interesting thing you're talking about, I think, about him and Halifax and that thing. There's 2 different reported things of what happened. Whether I think Halifax sort of pulled himself out of the thing, and so it was given to Churchill, and he'd just been involved in Norway, which I was getting the impression from I think what you were writing that he wasn't so much to blame for Norway. Is that right?
Well, the timing's out, and there's a problem in that the army don't really know what they're trying to achieve. Although, as Jim will tell you, it's a net win for the Royal Navy, which then becomes really, really important with the prospect of the possibility of a German invasion. Is that the Kriegsmarine? So much of the Kriegsmarine is at the bottom of the sea as a result of the Norway campaign that it's for the British strategically, big picture, it is actually a win. But it just looks terrible because you're having to pull soldiers out and all this sort of stuff. And the land component goes very, very badly. And you lose an aircraft carrier in the aftermath. But the fact that the Kriegsmarine takes such a kicking.
So how many did they lose? Did they lose a whole bunch of ships there?
Oh, absolutely loads. They lose 2/3 of their destroyers or something. I mean, it's a
Oh, really?
It's yeah. They I can't remember. I haven't got them off the top of my head, but
and it really shows how the Kriegsmarine has no depth. Whereas
and also
Navy,
you can't just magic up a navy. I think of all the armed forces, the navy is the hardest one to kind of just magic up. You need you need that kind of that core of experience to run through it, and they just don't have that. They don't.
And Napoleon didn't have that either.
No. The French navy was not up to scratch. Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
what's going to happen here, if we're not careful, is we will digress literally all day. And are you making a film? You when I spoke to you the other day, you were learning lines or something in the middle of the night.
Hamlet. I literally, I haven't gone to sleep yet. I'm in Glasgow and I haven't gone to sleep. And I found it's the best time to learn lines is when no one's going to call you, no one's going to this, you can't do anything. Just sit there because I'm playing all the roles in Hamlet. I did this for Great Expectations just before in the same theatre that you were in now.
Yeah.
Before you were in there. And that was
so you're learning the entire play?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But no, it's a cut down version. So it's 2 hours. It's 2 hours as opposed to 5
Even
hours.
So,
it's
crikey.
Yeah, but it's playing all the roles. So I play Hamlet and I play Ophelia and I play Gertrude and I play Claudius and Polonius and the bloke with the hat and and it's the real deal. It's Hamlet. It opens on the 19th of January in New York. So in the same theatre where we opened Great Expectations. So
we should delay you no longer. I feel like we're burning up.
Well, good luck with that. Time. Crikey, that's what an undertaking. What an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, incredible. It's that. So I'm touring at the moment, so I'm learning that at night and then campaigning to be an MP in Brighton Pavilion down in Brighton. So, yeah, just standard. Wow. It's a bit of an intense year. It has been.
Wow.
Well, all the very best for it, I have to say.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking, you realise this by now, we've been talking to Suzy Eddie Izzard about the Second World War and much else.
And many other rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Many other rabbit holes. Thanks very much. Great to talk to you guys.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks everyone for listening. We will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Bye.